inclusive. I wish more students had agreed to these electronic tracking implants. We only had one volunteer. If I were a truant boy out for a good time, I'd be right here, the Springfield Natural History Museum. You're mine, Simpson. Why, there are no children here at the 4-H club either. Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Freedom Matters Live. I had to start off with that classic Simpsons quote because it's amazing. We deal with a lot of people who are on our school boards who are out of touch and don't really know how to educate children correctly these days. They don't know how to listen to the parents. So that's a huge issue in Houston ISD. And I am so excited today to have several wonderful candidates on the show with me. They're conservative candidates who have their heads on straight. They're actually parents who care about the kids in the Houston area. And as you're going to see, we're going to dive into several issues going on with the Houston school systems right now. So I'm excited to talk to them. So I'm going to go ahead and add everyone to the stream here. I have Mr. Kendall Baker. Welcome, Kendall.
Hi, welcome. Hello, good morning.
Part two, right? We, for anyone who doesn't know, we interviewed Kendall last week. And so please go back and watch that episode because Kendall, you're amazing. It was so great to talk to you. We covered some topics that were really important. And so thank you for joining me again today.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. And so next we have Miss Caroline Walter. Hey, Caroline.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, doing great. So you're a candidate for district number 5, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. We're so happy to have you on today. I've already heard an interview with you on the Michael Berry show. I think it was whenever you were first starting to run, maybe, or maybe you'd been in the running for a while. But I thought this woman is amazing and I need to have her on and talk to her. So I'm so glad to have you. Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yes. And hi, Bridget.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm well, thank you.
Yes, well, thank you so much for joining as well. And I know that you all had a meeting previously that you were all part of, like a group chat online. So thank you for joining right after that meeting was over. And I know we're all running and trying to do everything at once. So thank you. So like I said, I've already interviewed Kendall, and I'd like to talk to you ladies a little bit just to get your backstory, your history, and a little bit about why you're running for the school board. So Caroline, let's start with you.
Sure. Okay. So I have 3 kids. They're in HISD. They go to a local elementary school, and nothing is more important to me than them and their education and what they're learning in school. School is a place where they spend 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. And it is unacceptable to me for that environment to be anything less than what I want for them going forward. Like, I want their school, what they're learning and where they are, to be a place they feel comfortable, a place I feel comfortable sending them. And right now that's not the case. And that's kind of why I jumped into this race.
Yeah. So you're an angry parent.
I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I am. I would like to see things done differently. And the only way to do that, I could have sat around complaining, or I could, do it myself. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Right. Step in and make your community better for everyone. Yeah, I agree. Okay. And Bridget, how about you?
Well, I'm, like Caroline, I am, have grown and raised. Actually, I have a grandchild on the way. We're so excited.
Yay.
But that led me last spring when I joined this race to get involved. I had just watching our current leadership fail in just responsibility to educating children in Houston. And it was just constant issue. Their focus was they were just off the focus. Mm-hmm. And that is about giving our kids foundational education that will give them agency to move on in life as adults. So I just felt like the focus is off the target.
Right. Well, yeah. So let me go ahead and just preface this with, I'm not a parent, and I went to my first school board meeting this past year when I was a part of a group of parents who were very upset about the mask mandates that their kids were facing in their local schools. So I showed up for these meetings and I spoke and I advocated for these parents who just wanted a voice because they were told, okay, you can't even attend this school board meeting unless you wear a mask. They would get up there and deliver passionate arguments saying, hey, my child's coming home with headaches. The studies are showing that kids are not spreading this virus. And I don't necessarily want to get into the mask conversation today, but that's sort of, I think, where a lot of people in Houston are at. The COVID situation sort of woke us up to, the further issues that are surrounding our school boards. So once I attended for the masking issue, I started to say, oh my gosh, there are all these other problems that we have to deal with. And then you three arose out of the crowd and ran for the school board this year. And I think other people like me, even if they don't have kids, they're excited to see people like you. Because the thing is, I don't have kids, but these are the future of our community, and my future children will be working with these future adults in our American society. And it's so important that we grab hold of them now and teach them well and get them on the right track. And not to mention, I think these people who are on the school board don't necessarily care about how these kids end up. They care about their political futures. So I'm so excited to have you guys on. So let's just dive into the first topic here. So we had several people in our group say, please ask them about vaccine mandates, because if they approve the COVID shot for children, we can just easily see our Houston school district saying, okay, well now, we're going to add this to a requirement for your child to attend schools. So can you guys, have you thought about that, in the future, what you would do and how you would handle that? I guess I should call out maybe Kendall. Kendall, tell us first what you think about that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I have thought about that, and I've heard from parents, regular day-to-day people, and they're all saying that, they don't want to be forced by anyone to make a medical decision concerning their child. It should be a choice, as everything else is, and that's what the outcry is. And so they want someone on the board who will represent and not force any mandates on them. That's what I'm hearing overall. We all know it's a trial vaccine, and some people are for it and some people are against it. So let's not, be elected officials and force someone else's will or our will on the people. Let's let that continue to be their choice.
Yeah. Yeah, you ladies, feel free to jump in. You may not agree with me, and I'd love to hear it if you don't.
I mean, I think it's important to note that a school board doesn't have this authority to mandate vaccines in general. This is the State Department of Health. They're the ones that determine, all the vaccines that children are required to have, chickenpox, MMR, all these vaccines have been around for a while. And with that said, they also have an easy option to opt out for religious or medical reasons. So if the school board were to go ahead and try to mandate vaccines, it's, again, another overreach of their power that they don't have the authority to do. And I would never be on board with breaking the law and betraying the oath these trustees take when they take office.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I agree. I guess you could carry that out and say they really technically didn't have the authority to issue mask mandates, especially once the executive order was lifted in Texas. But they just continued to push and push for some reason without any kind of scientific evidence that this was going to make a bit of a difference. So, yeah, I'm happy to hear that from you guys. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that because of COVID, our Houston School Board received lots of federal funding, extra funding, right, to get us through the pandemic. And it's blown the budget up. And there could potentially be strings attached with that, right? If you're receiving federal funding, you have to abide by federal mandates. So I'd like your, and that's my extent of the knowledge of that. So I'd love for you people to educate me further on that. And is this something that you'd be pushing back on once you're in office? Hey, Bridget, let's hear from you.
I think we've been talking about that, where we understand overreach. And again, all these mandates, all these federal funding, all these things with strings attached. I've looked at other districts that are spending more on their kids to catch up than we are. And so where's the focus on, again, if we're really trying to get the kids educated and we're not going to use it as a social program, then we really need to focus on what interventions can be done. If we're going to use this money, we need to look at how we're really going to give it. I mean, it needs to be a shot, of real focus on getting kids back to reading and back to writing and back to, the foundations. And so
common
whatever
sense
that takes,
education.
we need to be doing it.
Yeah. Right.
Well, it seems to me this money is going towards a system and not the students.
Right.
Because campuses are only receiving 20% of that. What is it? 1.1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of shocking, and I don't agree with that.
So do we have access to those numbers? Do we know where the rest of it is going, or can we only take a guess?
I don't even believe they've actually been officially approved to receive the funding yet. And I think that's another reason, if I had to guess, why we still have a mask mandate, because those monies have not been approved. And I think they're tied together, but they have created a budget based on what they expect to receive, and that's available on their website. And again, there's different areas, but 20% goes to campuses, and that's it.
That's
right.
Now, in terms of the money being associated or connected to these things you mentioned earlier, I heard those rumors. I'm not 100% for sure if the money is connected, especially the Ursher funds. Am I pronouncing that right?
ESSER.
I'm not for sure.
ESSER.
If those funds are,
ESSER, yeah.
Yeah, ESSER funds.
Yeah, I'm not for sure if they're connected to having to teach certain things in the school, like CRT. But I've heard rumor, but I'm waiting, to get in there and roll up my sleeves and find out what the truth is, and dispel the rumors and use the money the right way.
Yeah. I know if we've seen anything from this current administration, they'll use any authority they can locally to enforce what they want to be done in Texas, right? I mean, they've tried to use OSHA to enforce vaccine mandates. So I could definitely see that happening, right? And that's the easiest way to push something on, Texas schools, right? Here, we'll give you this money, but you have to do these things. And we've seen Houston, I think they're more than happy to, be the henchman for this administration. So
That's right.
Sounds like you got your work cut out for you there. Because they're going to be saying, right, you don't want money for our schools. Are you trying to tank our schools? Why are we not taking this money? So sounds like an uphill battle.
It doesn't have to be. If you have enough people in there with the right priorities, it's quite simple.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little about CRT, critical race theory. How many times have you folks been asked this question in interviews?
Every day.
Dozens?
A million times.
Right. Okay. Yeah, the same. So critical race theory, we've seen that, our school systems are trying to divide us more than bring our children together. I mean, I grew up in the 90s. I remember there was never any kind of talk about, well, because I'm this color, then, I have special privileges, or I'm downtrodden because I'm this color. It wasn't an issue. It wasn't. I feel like we were getting to a point where we didn't really see color. It was just like, hey, you're my friend, and I like hanging out with you. So that's my personal perspective. It feels like we're going backward, and it feels like now the school systems are actually taking steps to make it so, to divide us up. So critical race theory. Let's talk a little bit about that. What do you guys think about that, and how would you push back on it?
Well, it's technically not allowed in state curriculum in the state of Texas, but it's there anyway. And so I think that the main thing that needs to be done is that trustees on the board need to hold the schools accountable. Those schools that are teaching these teachings that are not supposed to be in our schools, they're just getting away with it, and that's not right, and it's not good. It's divisive. It is, I believe, teaching racism. Yeah. These kids aren't racist. We're not a racist country, and they're trying to make us that. And they're starting at the youngest level to brainwash these kids into thinking that they're superior or oppressed. And it's sad. It makes me sad. I have little kids,
Yeah.
and we teach them to treat everyone equally, and that's what should be taught at school, not all this other nonsense.
You know, kids don't see race until you tell them to see race.
Mhm.
And it seems like it's intentional at this point. If you're teaching CRT, you want them to judge someone by the color of their skin, right? Not just who they are as a person.
Right.
So you're saying that we're finding there are individual teachers who are violating this law now, who are still teaching it, and maybe the principal is turning the other way in the school.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the curriculum on HISD for certain schools. You can find that. I can email that to you. It's not widespread. It's not at every school, but it's there, and it's going to be increasingly taught, I think.
Really?
And it's easy to say, oh, we can't teach that. We're not allowed. Well, no, you're not allowed by law, but it's going on anyway, and you're doing nothing about it. So that's just as bad.
And it's in the curriculum. That's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, if you could email me that'd be wonderful. We can share it on our pages. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, Bridget, what's your opinion
It's
on these?
you know, the thing is, it's baked in. It's been slowly, well, not even slowly. It's baked into a lot of these curriculums that started with, let's just even go back to Common Core or social emotional learning. A lot of these names that have been altered, you know, changed over the years, these philosophies about how to teach children, and is so focused on their emotional state and how they feel and all of those things that it's kind of baked into that. And so, you know, again, we're putting a lot of investment into that, you know, those issues versus the issues that, again, give kids launch pads to, one, go to the next grade level, and two, to graduate successfully. And that is back to those foundational, why aren't we drilling in on things that we know work, phonics, and, you know, great old school math methods that we know work. They always did, but now we turned the profile on every subject to how they feel about things. And there is the baked in part of where this race theory issues become predominant. And so that's kind of where it comes from.
Yeah. So Common Core, just kind of give me a summary. So it's what I understand is Common Core it's changed the way that they do math, and arguably the system that they're using is more difficult and maybe less able to, I don't know, but worse, like it's a worse way to do math, right? And then they also have is it called emotional learning, I believe?
SEL.
SEL.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they're asking them, how do you feel about these things? And it's more, what I've heard people say is that it's an insidious way to sort of sit down with the student and talk to them about, well, what are your parents teaching you about this thing? And sort of do like a psychological evaluation and put a barrier between the student and the parent. Is that a good understanding of Common Core and what they've been trying to do with that?
I think so.
I mean, yeah, I would think that, you know, I know that, you know, we've asked these teachers, and I feel for teachers. Let's remember this too. I mean, we have teachers who just really want to teach. They came to teach. They're prepared to teach. They want success out of their children. So we're not trying to make enemies of teachers, because we know that teachers are doing the yeoman's work of trying to get our kids through, but their frustrations need to be heard. And that is, they can't be they're not trained therapists. They're not, a lot of times even parents, you know, they may be young adults that have not entered, and they're forced to be, you know, therapists and counselors and parents, and they're forced to be all these things for children and not doing the job that they were hired or educated to do. And this is something that we're we can't ask these teachers, they're not getting paid to be CEOs and work all the time and manage all these different things coming at them. They're there to teach building blocks to get the kids to the next grade level.
Yeah.
And that's the role.
Becky, you know what? Before we move too far, I want to just
Sure.
spend 5-10 seconds on the critical race theory.
Yeah, of
And
course.
teaching that children are oppressors and others are victims. I want to just set the record straight to the voters, African American voters that I've been talking to. I am totally for teaching of American history,
Mm-hmm.
Black American history,
Yes.
things of that nature.
I agree.
I am totally for that.
Yes.
The CRT is just a new word, not only to divide children up, but to divide people up.
Yeah.
In this time and era that we're living in. We need to now focus on why 34% of 8th graders are performing at grade level in math, and why 46% of 4th graders are performing below grade level in reading. We need not to be confused with all these new topics, these new things. Get back to the basics.
Right.
We've got 21 failing high schools. That's
Yeah.
all for now. 21. That's terrible.
That's unbelievable. And it's almost this systemic issue, right? Where we're seeing, okay, in the schools, they don't want to teach kids the basics. They want to teach them all this political stuff and indoctrinate them, right? And then we see, at the city of Houston, our city services, they don't want to fix the potholes. They want to focus on, bathroom issues, as we saw with Mayor Parker. It's such an issue. And it's always, Democrat-led progressives who they have a larger agenda, and it's never to support the children or support our city. It's always insidious. And you see with Republicans and conservatives, they're trying to reel it back in and say, hey, you're off track here. By the way, I don't like what you're trying to teach my kids. And also, we should be doing the basics as well. It's a huge issue.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, that was a touchy topic. So thank y'all for talking about CRT with me. So we have another issue as well that a lot of parents have been talking about lately. Have you seen the school board meetings where parents are bringing up these sexually explicit books that they're finding in libraries? We had a lady, Kristen Martin, who's a part of our group, and she got up in front of our Fort Bend school board and she read from the book. And if you watch the video, it's like, oh, Kristen, you're brave, because she was reading some terrible stuff. And this is a book that kids can check out in libraries. And I guess you could argue maybe those books ended up there by accident. Maybe they just didn't have a good vetting system. I can see that, librarians are busy, but also it could be that we're pushing this on kids. And we're also seeing these sex ed curriculum, being brought up where they're talking about things that students do not need to be learning, especially at these young ages. These are things that parents should be teaching to them. So tell me a little bit about what you guys think on those things. Kendall, why don't you start us off?
I've heard the same thing about these books. And, back when I was in school, we never heard of such thing, especially in school or in the library.
Yeah.
And so, again, I have not verified, but if that is the case, then it needs to be discussed. We need to talk about why, how, when, where, what we are exposing children to, and why, what's the purpose. And so, again, and I open the floor to my colleagues, as I usually do. It's rumors to me, but I think it was terrible when I heard of it.
Yeah.
And that they're slipping this material in the schools and in the libraries.
Right.
Some of it, if it's there, we've seen it, a bit. I don't know how broad that is, but it's not acceptable. And like Kendall said, if that happened, if a student brought one of these books to school when I was going to school, just not that long ago, they would have been suspended. They would have gotten in trouble for it. And now we have the schools putting in and the parents trying to tell the schools, well, we don't want this in here. It's insane. And I think the big issue that covers all of these topics is that these schools need to teach education, like facts, and let the parents parent. They are not our kids' parents. They have no right to project their thoughts and their opinions on these little kids and trying to mold their minds. They need to stick to the facts. We need to stick to parenting.
Yeah.
End of story.
Agreed. Right. Bridget, got anything to add there?
The only thing we would say is, we know that there's an article in the Chronicle, actually today's Chronicle, about the library issue. And the libraries have, their issues from a funding standpoint. So it's muddy waters, as we could say. But we can't mandate from the state level about looking at books in the library when we don't have people overseeing the libraries. And so, when only, 55 schools and the 276 HISD schools have librarians full-time or certified, as you might want to say, no one's there to be watching what's going on if they have a library at all. And so we need to be cautious about, once we're in position, we need to be looking at the budgets and how schools with libraries are doing, and maybe model some ideas about what the outcomes of those schools are. We know we just don't know all of that yet. So I don't want to be too quick to jump on without getting the real backstory behind the reasons that these schools aren't being able to really fund a good library. So those are issues that we need to get down to the bottom of and see where we are on the library issue. Which I think, until we know that, we can just only tell you what we hear. And so we have to be careful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. You need to have a balanced perspective on what you're talking about. And something Kendall and I talked about in his interview was, funding for teachers. And of course, librarians would be a part of that as well. Like, you want to pay your people well to have good people in these school systems to run the library. And, if you want someone to be vigilant when they're vetting which books go into the library. And I'd love to know what that process is. Does anyone, not to put you on the spot, do you guys know how we go about choosing books to go into our libraries?
I don't.
Yeah.
There's a list. You can look up all the supposedly every book in an HISD school. There's on their website, you can see. So if you hear a book that is kind of inappropriate, you can look up to see whether that book is in one of our libraries, but I don't know the process of getting the books there.
Okay.
I don't know, but I do know that the curriculum department, I believe, has a lot to do with that.
Okay.
And so there are certain departments that do certain things, and I plan to work and look into those departments and see how they operate and see how the mechanism is they use to select material and curriculums and so forth. But I know that they play a vital role in setting up curriculum.
It could be up to just a few individuals who have their own systems for choosing these books, and maybe they just need a better system or something, more support in that area. Yeah, I agree. Okay, we had someone comment. Thank you, Ashley, for helping me with that definition. SEL, social emotional learning, aka CRT. Okay, now we know. If anybody wants to go look it up, that's what that is. So, okay, let's move on to a different topic. Concealed carry in schools. So from the left's perspective, we always want to say, okay, guns in schools, zero, no tolerance, that should never be a thing. But we've had that policy for decades now, and we're starting to see that the bad guys with guns still show up in the schools and do these shootings. So my opinion is we need to have good teachers trained to use firearms. They have their concealed carry license, and they are in these classrooms with guns ready to protect their students whenever they're attacked. You may disagree with me. I'd love to hear your opinions on that. So, Miss Bridget, why don't you start us off with that?
For one, we know that HISD over the summer there was conversations regarding getting campus police and maybe taking down the numbers of campus police. And so, one, let's look at that first. I mean, we need to look at the people that are actually trained, prepared. Do we need a better train? Do we need to add more? We need to really look at that first start with that.
Right.
I mean, that's a concern. How do communities and families feel about the presence of a security guard on campus. Most of them probably feel pretty good about that. So that's input from our communities and talking to our constituents, making sure that we're reflecting what they want to see on their campuses. And then in turn, having a force that's trained, prepared, and knows how to handle situations like that with all the property, the proper authority. That would be where I would first start. And then, someone brought up to me one day the conversation about, on airplanes, you have trained people that are in plain clothes that go on airplane, marshals.
Right.
And I said, those are all things that I think we should, don't take away from the possibility of a conversation about those things when we get elected. And that is, let's look at alternative options as how to best prepare our kids. But let me leave it at this on this issue. I was doing a little back looking, and since these social emotional learning, Common Core, these original ideas about focusing so much on emotion, actually we've seen more issues with violence in schools because we're letting emotion drive everything. And if that's the case, then kids are told that their emotions matter more. And when they're not adult enough to make decisions because you've grown up, you're making irrational decisions based on emotion. And
Right.
it's interesting that the time frame for both of those things seem to sort of match up. I just don't remember as a child in the 80s these things happening. So I don't know. They're just things that we need to be looking at and see if there's some correlation between emotional focus and academic focus, and where that's leading us in aggressions in schools, period, if it's fighting or whatever the case. So
I love that. Yeah. I mean, because if you're focused on, subjective truth versus objective truth, right? What I feel matters more than actual facts. I don't like this person, but you're taught, well, we used to be taught lives matter, right? You can't just do harm to someone just because you don't like them. But if you're living by your emotions, then that goes out the window. Yeah, I agree. That's an interesting correlation for sure. Yeah.
So I want to just say too, as I said the other day, I had some stats from 2009 to 2018. There were 180 school shootings where 356 teachers, students, and administrators fell victim. And then they've even increased. There was a little break during 2020, because of COVID. But I said that once I become a board member, we would discuss those ideas, as Bridget said, options. And, to hear what the people want. I totally agree with her, to hear what the people want versus what we want in terms of protection. And then I had another thought after I got finished the conversation. We first need to be responsible parents, those who have guns, to keep the guns locked up, safe, out of the reach of your children, so that they won't get an idea. If they do, they won't be from your house to go to school with a weapon. But then, like I said, once we, get around the table, we now have the opportunity to just share ideas, and then also certainly first and foremost get input from the public on how do they want us to move forward and keeping their children protected while they're away these 8 or 9 hours per day.
Yeah. And Kendall, I know you had some interesting thoughts on that when we did your interview, about having these teachers be trained. Maybe you want to go into more details of what you had said.
Yeah. Well, that was just an idea. I said, I bounced it around the board. I said, when I was a 911 telecommunicator, we had to receive FBI training, psychological training. They had to make sure that we were well equipped just to answer a phone. So I said, if we, mirrored that idea and thought about having some extra safety in school. I said perhaps having some trained administrators and perhaps a few teachers that only local, state, and federal law enforcement would be aware of, to be trained and, to pass the psychological examination, to pass the, the gunfire examination, to make sure that they're there to have a cushion between the time that it takes, the first responders to arrive, which is generally around 10 or 11 minutes, because we find in these massive shootings that's when most of the carnage occurs, is while waiting on the first responders.
Yeah.
And so our children wind up being sitting ducks. So I just said that would be just an idea to throw around the board, because it looks like even the shooting the other day in Michigan, God bless their souls, those who passed away, it looked like it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And so we have to put some more things in place, and it may have to be arming staff and perhaps a few teachers that no one knows about. And I said, no one will know but law enforcement. And that's just an idea I threw out there.
Yeah. Okay. And Caroline, what do you think about this topic?
You guys handled that question perfectly. I agree specifically with what Kendall just said, and Bridget, as far as we need to start at having security on campuses before we just start sending teachers to school with concealed weapons. Mm-hmm. I think there needs to be, as Kendall just explained very articulately and detailed, a system in order to have this protection on campuses. Teachers carrying weapons, concealed weapons, that's a topic that there's a lot of parents. There's going to be a lot of parents that are not comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. And even if I were one of the parents that are comfortable, I'm not saying I am or I'm not, but that's something that is so serious. Mm-hmm. We can't take that away from parents. Parents have the right to feel comfortable with their kids going to school. And if that's something that I think that's not I don't think it's black and white. I think it's something that needs to be, unless every single parent in the district was okay with that, it can't happen, because that's a serious issue where a lot of parents would not feel comfortable sending their kids to school. And on a lower scale, I know what that feels like when I don't feel comfortable with the situation my kids are in, and I can't imagine being on that high. It's just not something that I would be okay doing, making any parent feel out of control or scared to send their kid to school.
Okay, so you're more for campus security, actual officers on campus. Okay. Would you be for metal detectors or any other precautions besides that?
If it's appropriate for the school, and if the community in that school thinks that would be beneficial. I know that we've talked about this in the past, and there's some schools that don't want the metal detectors for their own specific reasons, and that needs to be taken in consideration, because those administrators know their community and their students best, and we need to go off of that. Yeah. I know, for example, though, Bel Air High School, they are having a hard time getting the security that most of the parents want, and when you have parents of a school that are basically begging the administration to do something about their security issues, and they're not doing nothing, I mean, they need to address that. So I think it comes down to listening to the schools, listening to the parents in the schools, and doing what's best for them, because one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah, you know what? I agree. And it kind of like this meeting here reminds me, kind of resembles like if we're already serving right now, and this is how we will be. I'm listening, I'm taking in, I'm listening, I'm taking in. And like I said, that was just an idea. The first thing, as you were talking, what came to mind first was to talk to the police chief of HISD to find out what their plans are, and to see, what their first response is when there's a mass shooting, and to see what assistance they need. So first we'll start at the bottom and work our way up. But then, of course, like you said, get input from the community before we make any move. So yeah, I agree with what everybody's saying.
Yeah. And I mean, this makes me think of another topic, which I don't even have on my agenda, but maybe we could go over the topic of school choice, because it would be amazing if we could have certain schools where every parent of a child at that school is like 100%, I want my teachers to be armed, right? And they can choose to send their child to that school. right? And if you're not comfortable, you go to a regular public school with a metal detector or something, you know. And I don't know a lot about school choice. I know that it's something that keeps getting held up when, you know, they try to pass legislation. Do any of you know if that's something that you can advocate for from your position, or kind of where we are with getting that passed in Texas?
Well, I'm confused in terms of, we have school choice in the sense that kids can go to schools in the district if they're not happy with their school, as long as there's room at that school. They can apply to change to a different school. They
Okay.
can, you know, try to go to a charter or, you know, the magnet process. So there are some options for school choice, but the issue with school choice is, one, do we have enough? Two, maybe why can't we improve the schools in the neighborhood, which I'm a big advocate for neighborhood schools. I really support feeder pattern schools. I think that you get to know your community, the community knows you, the schools can prepare for the children that are coming. You know, there's something to be said for
Now,
that.
what's a feeder pattern school? I've heard that, but I don't know what that is.
Okay, so feeder pattern is when you go from a known elementary that feeds into a known middle that's close to your neighborhood, and therefore then to a known high school, which is also, again, subject to your area. And that's not always ideal. It's not always the best, but it went away in the 80s. And that's when I think a lot of public school fell off the rails. We weren't fixing the problems at the local schools, and we were just sending kids across on buses outside their areas where they lived. And it was good intentioned, but sometimes they go a little far. And this then created the idea that we needed charter schools, and then this created the back to now we've got magnet schools. It kind of created the circumstances that we're in, whether good or bad. It's, again, something we need to really look at. How do we go about the circumstances that we have today? And so I feel like parents need to have options and choice. And it would be really nice if the district could be as accommodating with those families that really, really, really want to seek alternative options if they can't solve the problems at their neighborhood schools. So it's a kind of it's a chess match. We just need to play it and look at the whole scope of the district, see where we can meet the
Okay.
middle somehow.
So these people who want to transfer to a different school, the district is not always accommodating. Is that a difficult process?
It can be, I think, for families who especially don't know how to work the system. We know there are, you know, groups of people that are trying to help support parents who want alternative options and can't, you know, get into their local charter or the magnet of their choice. And so, or they're wanting to go to a school that's capped, meaning they're, you know, overly subscribed to, and then they're fed on to another school that they didn't expect to have. So I think I'm, you know, speaking as an outsider at the moment until we're in, but we really need to look at that system and how we best advocate for parents all across the board. And that's where I'm about. Parents need to have choice in school. We need to give them every opportunity to make that as easy as possible.
Right.
I just want to say, I want to echo the thought of one of my voters, or several voters, that they told me not to focus on school choice, but make the existing schools upgrade the standards of teaching and make the existing schools, you know, be a school that parents want to choose to go to.
You don't have to leave.
Yeah,
I agree.
They told me that
That's right.
at a meet and greet. I said, okay, I get you. So that'll be my focus, you know, to improve what we have so that people won't have to want to go out and find other schools. I said, okay. So that's just me, just an example of echoing what voters are saying in my district.
Because a lot of parents don't have the time or energy to transfer their child, right? They just say, "Oh,
I
I don't
know.
like what's going on, but
Right.
I got to live with it,"
Yeah.
Parents want their kids to go to their neighborhood school. That's ideal. It's convenient. They're able to engage in their education better. It builds up the community. It's what most parents want, and HISD is almost standing in the way of that.
Mhm.
Rather than closing schools, figure out a way to rebuild that school and get the students back in that school. With that will come more money to make the improvements that you need and to put in the programs that you need. And it's a trickle down, trickle up effect, if you
Yeah.
will. And I
Yeah.
think that needs to be a focus. You're right, Kendall. That's a great point.
Yeah, and I had a conversation. I did an interview with Gary Monroe before November 2nd, and unfortunately, he didn't make it to the runoffs like you guys. But he's got some great ideas too, and he's very much tuned into what's going on as far as the reason why these schools are being shut down. Right? What he said it's a very dark reason. He said that the school district is getting into the real estate business, right? They want to shut down these schools and then lease out the school property to, churches or organizations that want to lease it. And so it's a money thing, right? They shut down the school, pack the kids into the school, 5 miles away, and you have this property to work with. So it's terrible. Okay, so let's move on to the topic of the TEA attempted takeover of Houston schools. And I want to share an article here. This is a really scary thing that's happening these days. So I've got here the Texas Tribune, state to take over Houston ISD by replacing school board and superintendent. And this was a November 6th article that it sounds like this is underway, and it's a scary thing. For a lot of people. And I'd love to get your opinions on this. What they're saying in this article essentially is the Houston ISD has failed, several marker points, right? They're not meeting standards. There's also some corruption that's going on in the schools. I'm going to scroll down to the paragraph that talks about that. Last week, a final state investigation report recommended Morath, who is the TEA board member who wants to do this. They recommended that he replace the school board, finding that it had violated state open meetings law, attempted to influence how contracts were awarded, and took action on district issues individually without consulting other board members. So this is a little bit crazy, and I'd love to hear your opinions on things. Kendall, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, well, I just want to make it clear that my incumbent, Holly Flynn Velaseca, is one of the trustees who participated in the legal meeting. And there is a lawsuit that was filed against her and seeking her removal. And I've been saying since the beginning of my campaign, had I been in her position, I would have resigned. And so I don't know how far the TEA is into that, but I want District 6 residents to know that I'm running against an incumbent who was a key element in the TEA's investigation and their reasoning to want to take over.
So she was pushing for this to happen.
Ma'am?
She was part of it.
She was
She was
part
involved
of it.
in it.
Yeah.
Yes, she was involved in a meeting at a restaurant. And it's all written everywhere to give a contract to the old superintendent, Abe Saavedra, in which he did not take to bring him back. And that was called an illegal or walk-in quorum. And that violated the TEA rules, state rules. And they're under I understand, a criminal investigation for that.
Wow. Yeah. So she's part of the corruption that has led to this.
Yes.
Okay.
They were, if I'm not mistaken, they were all on that board, correct? And I know Anne was directly involved in that same meet. Is that correct, Bridget?
Yes. Anne Sung was the instigator. She actually met with Abe Saavedra on her own, called him, and she says it's for counsel. Mm-hmm. But then, funny how right after she met with him to get counsel, Then she went into the board meeting and actively staged what would be considered a coup to replace the interim superintendent with Abe Saavedra. I don't even
That's
know
right.
that Abe knew that that was going to be what happened. I think that it was just so they met in a walking quorum and tried to supersede the rest of the trustees without them knowing that they were going to replace Granita Latham, who had, was still interim and still had the authority. And they'll argue, and let me give you background real quick. They'll argue that the state was not allowing the trustees to do a search for a new superintendent, which was the reason why they were hamstrung and not able to do their duty or their rights as trustees to go searching for a new superintendent. So it was a complicated set of issues, but because of the lack of leadership that they had, this trustee board and the one prior, and out of hand they were, the state didn't trust them to make the decision. So it was, they weren't trustworthy, which is what you are. You're a trustee. And so if we've got elected officials who the state can't trust to make rational decision making, and they took that authority away from them, and then they went ahead and tried to do it anyway. This is the problem. And this is why we're in the state that we're in. We've got years and years and years of the same overreach that is just degrading the public trust. And it's happening all over the state.
And you're right, Kendall, they should have resigned, because you know what? For them to put their district in the position of a state takeover, which is not ideal for anybody, at just for their own benefit, just shows, where they're coming from and what their intentions are.
And see, and that's what
they should be selfless.
That's right, sister. And they're not campaigning on that. They're campaigning on being champions for children, experts, and all of that. But they're trying to cover up why this race is so critical, why we're running. We're trying, this is a non-paid position, ladies and gentlemen. It takes a lot of time and compassion, but we're willing to do it because of the public outcry and the national embarrassment and local outcry that meeting caused. That also, as you said earlier, Bridget, dealt with the wrongful ousting of the former interim superintendent, Granita Latham. You remember all the preachers and African American community came out and they were praying and all that in front of that. That was horrible, and the public needs to remember that. That's happened last year. That's going on now, and we need to fight for a change. Y'all need to get to the polls to vote for all three of us immediately.
Yeah, because these contracts, right? I mean, this is an unpaid position, but what I hear is they hire the contractors who are their friends and they get kickbacks. Is that what you guys see are happening right now?
I can't accuse anybody of anything, but that's rumor on the street. And actually, one of the trustees, Kendall, remind me of his name, Bridget. Do you know that was when the FBI went in and raided Hattie Mae Center? He's been charged with kickbacks.
He was the controller of.
Okay. Yeah.
The financial.
Okay.
I mean, he was, I can't remember his name, and I know it. I have it in an article.
It's just historically kind of what is suspected, right?
Yeah. And do we think that's what the issue, what Holly was trying to do when she met with that contractor? Or maybe I misheard you. Your opponent, Kendall, or maybe it was something different she was doing.
I'm not for sure about that particular issue, her meeting with a contractor. I just know she was key in that illegal quorum. I think it was Ann Sung who was paid by a contractor some $37,000 and then voted, or had to recruit yourself from voting.
Recruit yourself, yeah.
Yeah, recruit yourself from voting, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got so much corruption going on down there. Ladies, it's just
where there's smoke, there's fire, right? They wouldn't be doing all this stuff, if they didn't have some insidious things going on in the background. Yeah. And that's what's led to the TEA saying, hey, Houston Independent School District, you're off track, so we need to take you over. And some people have framed this as a bad thing because it's the state taking over the local decision making. But do you guys, in your opinion, do you feel like this needs to happen? And if you get into office, are you worried that you will then have no power? I mean, how do you see the future rolling out here?
I'll speak to this. You know, I have an issue with, I really am all for voters' rights, and that we should be, you know, we want to maintain our ability to elect officials that are, especially when it comes to taxation without representation. We're looking at all of the citizens in Houston that are being taxed mightily in our property taxes. And if you have kids or don't have kids or whatever, if you own anything in Houston, you're paying for it. And so we need to really remember that we want that authority as tax-paying citizens to elect officials. That's what you do. You elect somebody that you trust so that they will take on that mantle while you can go back to your work and you can go back to your life and trust the people that are leading you. Right. So if I'm not in favor of the idea of a state takeover, if that's what they decide to do because of elected officials that are not capable, then that goes back to the voters. The voters need to be making, as Kendall said, they need to be vetting and voting. Yeah. And they need to be walking in and making rational decisions about the people that choose to lead them in their tax dollars and in the children and in the betterment of this city that we love so desperately. And so we want great outcomes for all people in Houston. And so our goal is to make sure that we are transparent about that and that we are accountable to those individuals that we are serving. And so when if the state were to take over, you know, we would have to sit back without authority. But you know what? I'm also love to learn. So in that process, I could be learning a lot. So, you know, it's up to the state at this point. It's up to the court at this point. Again, this goes back to vetting and voting. You need to make sure that you're vetting for, your courts and your judges matter too. They're your last line of defense. If we're not vetting and voting our local judges, then and our state elected officials, then it goes to the courts, and they have the last right to make the decisions for you as taxpayers.
Yeah, very good point.
Bridget.
Well said, Bridget. I concur with everything Bridget said, and I would like to add that the TEA investigated. They found that the board did violate the Open Meetings Act. Mm-hmm. They found out that the board of trustees acted on behalf of board members other times exceeding their scope of authority. And they found out that the HISD board manipulated contracts to circumvent procurement rules. In a perfect storm, I love for those investigations to continue, because if there's something going on legally, it needs to be straightened out. But with the perfect storm, I love for all four of us to be elected. And then once the investigating clears out, we have new leadership, and all that trouble that was caused by the old leadership has been moved out. And now the public will have perhaps a chance to trust the trustees again.
And then you can focus on just educating the kids, right?
Which is focus on educating
the kids to be there for.
Right.
Yeah. Which leads me to my last question. I know we've been talking for an hour, so I want to kind of wrap this up, but I want to hear from each of you just some different methods or ideas that you have for ways to include more critical thinking in the curriculum, ways that we can be more creative about the way we educate kids, and the way we can make them sort of grow them into little citizens who can think outside of the box. Bridget, I watched a recent interview with you where you were talking about when we were in school, in past times, kids would have duties, right? They would raise the flag on the flagpole. They would sweep the classrooms. They were little good citizens as part of, their school system. So do you have some ideas on how to get kids more involved in having more skin in the game, right? More involvement in their schools.
Exactly.
And in their learning. Yeah.
It's called civic engagement. And,
right.
I'm a product of a civic, my family, as well as our school. And I was not the top of my class, but I learned a lot about leadership and about serving others, and have lived a life of service for others, for that very reason, that we were founded on as a country, in this Judeo-Christian country that we live in, but that we are out to serve others. And in doing that, from elementary level, you learn that you can be a participant in your civic engagement and in your community. And you can, like you said, clean erasers. You can, help the librarian shelve books. You learn to respect adults in this process. You learn to work for the betterment of your surroundings. And I look at your school building like a little city. And you can say, my mayor is my principal, and my city council is this, that, and the other. And, if we were we'd be doing a dual service, and that is teaching kids about how to be civic leaders, and also about how to inform the decision-making that happens, give them a little bit of authority. And kids come to school excited about that kind of thing, doing the announcements.
Yep.
And these should be leadership opportunities, growing kids to maybe aren't, the straight A student. Maybe they can excel in other areas in their community. And that gives kids hope, and that gives them outlook that says, I'm beyond myself. I'm looking to others. And that is the kind of social emotional learning we need to be doing.
Right.
We're out there serving others, and that gives kids the most respect, and that gives them most, again, agency of anything besides reading and writing and math.
I agree. The kids take pride in their jobs. I love our elementary school has a safety patrol, and they have the kids doing the morning announcements. And we could take that a step further. And, we have a new theater program. A lot of parents want to include more of the arts into our schools. And a great way to do that, and to teach civics, which is a foundational teaching, I believe, in our schools. It should be. When I was growing up, we every grade level had a period of time. And we reenacted. There was a day where it was like we went back to this period of time, and each of us had a character, and you dress up, and you learn about this person in history who played a role in our history, and how it all came together, and what it all meant. And history can be a little boring for some kids, especially young kids. So doing things like this, where they're engaging and they're learning by doing, could really make a difference in their lives. Like, I look back and I remember when I went to school dressed up as Susan B. Anthony, when we learned about the women's rights movement. And these are things kids remember, and they make a difference. And I think we need to focus on bringing those things in rather than the divisive racial issues.
Right.
America, we need to have pride in America in our schools.
Yes, and just to add my 2 cents, why don't we be creative, as you said earlier, and after we get our reading and writing and and social science and so forth down pat, let's do some mock how to be a doctor, or how to be a lawyer, or how to run a restaurant, how to be a janitor. Some mock things, teach them at an early age how to start a business as they grow older.
Yeah.
Then as you get into middle school, start telling them about the stock market and how that works and so forth and so on. Let's start being creative about what it's going to take once you get into the real world. Because see, I graduated from high school when I was 17. I was, led by a father and a mother who showed me things at an early age. I was a plumber at age 16 while going to school. I had all these options where I had exposure So we get the exposure to them early, because not every child wants to go straight to college.
That's right.
You get the exposure early, you have options. So now I have the skill set of a plumber, a roofer, and also a pastor, and things that I want to do, because I had those options. So there are a lot of ways to be creative with these different ideas versus these innuendos that they're trying to indoctrinate our children with now.
Right. I agree. Well, I love it, guys. As far as I'm concerned, you three are on track, and you will be wonderful when you get into the school boards. And hey, then we won't need a TEA investigation and take over, right?
Exactly.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you so
much.
much. And you know what? I was going to share a map of your different areas. I'm going to add an image of that into the comments section on this video for people who are wondering whose district am I in. And just so you know, you can go to the Harris County voter website. Just put in your get your sample ballot. Put in your name and your address, and you can just see if you're a part of this runoff election, right? And it'll tell you whose district you're in. So hopefully that helps everyone. Early voting is today and tomorrow, right? So get out there early if you can't go on Saturday. Right. So it's Saturday, December 11th. This coming Saturday is the last chance you have. So please, everyone go out and vote. And I'm just looking through the comments we have right now. Everyone's saying, please share this. Yes, please share this video. Get it out there.
Thank you.
And everyone loves
Will
it.
you share the information that you showed us, the articles
Sure.
about this TA takeover and the information surrounding that? Because that's a topic that a lot of voters don't really know.
Right.
They don't know. They need to know that.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, for sure. I'll put that article in the comments as well. So
thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And y'all have a great rest of your day, and just get through this week. I know you can do it.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.